Hey, what's up, guys? LegalBro here. We're back, baby, and today we're talking about wage and hour theft. Happens all the time. You know what I do, folks. I represent veterans, military service members, consumers, and everybody that's got an issue with big business and big insurance. Here's a common one that I see: miscategorizing workers. Let's get into it.
Florida. She says her morning started at 5 a.m., opening the store, putting out the food, and doing a lot of prep work. But once customers started arriving, she says her job didn't exactly look like what you'd expect from an assistant manager.
Okay, so the first thing that we've got here is we've got somebody who works for Panera Bread as an assistant manager. And what she's talking about is that when she comes in, she opens the store up, she gets everything ready, she preps everything for the day before maybe the other staff gets there. And then she gets on to her managerial tasks, right? Or hypothetically.
Maybe I would work cashier that day. Maybe I would work the line, prepping salads and doing things like that. And that's where I spent the majority of the rest of my shift.
Palliser estimates she worked 50 to 55 hours a week. And because of her title, she made salary. She says she wasn't paid for any of her overtime.
So remember, down here in Florida, you get time and a half. So if you make $10 an hour, every hour over 40 hours, you make $15 an hour, right? So if she's working 15 hours over 40, she should be getting time and a half on all of that. How these employers get away with stealing money from these employees is they say, you know what, Susie Q, you're not an hourly worker, you're a manager. And because you're a manager, we're going to work you to the bone. You're not getting breaks. You're not getting lunch. You are going to do all of the same tasks as everybody else, but you're a manager. So you don't get overtime. You get a salary. Much, much better. That is the lie that has been sold to the American people over and over and over again. And it's wrong. It's a misclassification of workers. If your company is doing this, you need to do something to stop it. But let's give Panera the benefit of the doubt and see what they were allegedly doing to this assistant store manager.
Palliser participated in a collective action complaint accusing Covelli Enterprises, the largest franchise of the brand, of not paying hundreds of assistant managers overtime. Panera and Covelli Enterprises have not responded to our request for comment. The lawsuit settled for several millions, and Palliser received a settlement payment. But for her, this issue is about more than just getting fair compensation.
I couldn't be there for my children. I couldn't be there for my husband. A lot of things in our life suffered greatly because of it.
So a collective action, folks, is very similar to a class action. It's a group of people coming forward and filing a lawsuit, right? So you see the Johnson & Johnson case that Mark Lanier brought where he represented 17 women against Johnson & Johnson for talc baby powder, right? You remember hearing about that lawsuit. He whacked them at trial for like $4 billion. That's what's going on here. You've got a collective action. A class action, maybe more of, hundreds of people, thousands of people, right? And what's the difference between a class action and a collective action and a mass tort? Collective action's typically fewer people. Class action is a bunch of people with common harm. And a mass tort's different, right? So somebody with a Camp Lejeune claim, somebody might have cancer and the other person has Parkinson's, right? Their damages are going to be different, so that's why it's not a class action. And it's a mass tort. You bring those individually. In this case, we've got a collective action brought against Panera and the ownership group, and it looks like this one's settled out. Shocking, I know.
A growing number of employers are mislabeling rank-and-file workers as managers, according to a recent paper. Why? The paper alleges companies actually want to avoid paying overtime. Federal law requires employers to pay time and a half in overtime for people who work more than 40 hours or make less than about $35,500 a year. But if a worker is a manager, companies don't have to pay overtime. Advocates like Paul Son at the National Employment Law Project call that wage theft.
These big corporations, for example, dollar stores or fast food chains, will deliberately understaff their facilities and then instead rely on a group of low-paid workers whom they label managers to run the operations.
A recent study published in the National Bureau of Economic Research backs this up. Umi Gurun is a co-author of that study.
Companies are about like 5 times more likely to post a job posting that says, this job is you are going to be called a coffee cart manager or shampoo manager or any.
Wow. Did you get all that, folks? The next time you're in some sort of dollar store, fast food, or something where there aren't a ton of employees, right? Think like a pharmacy, right? That manager is probably doing mostly hourly work, but they're called a manager so that they can keep the amount of staff extremely low and also avoid paying them overtime. Seems like a win-win for the company and a lose-lose for employees. Not good.
Any kind of just a sandwich making manager.
Panera Bread, JP Morgan, and Walmart are just some of the companies who...
I've got a couple names that we are looking into suing for wage theft that would rival these, and I know if there are Fortune 100 companies doing it, that there are companies all over this country that are misclassifying workers to line their own pockets. If you believe that your company is either stealing your benefits, stealing your overtime, or stealing some other wage or benefit that you may be entitled to, you need to contact a lawyer. Even if it's not me, you need to contact somebody, because if nobody's willing to stand up, these companies are going to continue and take and take and take from you. Somebody's got to be willing to fight. And here's the beauty of it. Attorneys like me take wage and hour cases on a contingent fee basis. There's no fee unless you win. Typically what happens is the company that's on the hook may be required to pay our attorney's fees, or we may recover from the common fund. But you wouldn't have to advance the money to file suit. We would put up all the costs. That's the benefit. The other benefit is the company will stop scamming you and your family out of wages and benefits. Seems like a good win.
Settled multi-million-dollar lawsuits for misclassifying workers. The Biden administration is trying to fix this. They have a proposed overtime rule that is slated to be published in May, according to their agenda. But some business leaders aren't happy about potential changes. A vice president at the National Retail Federation said in a statement to NBC News, should the Labor Department change overtime regulations, it will have a detrimental impact on retailers' ability to offer the most flexible, generous, and tailored benefits packages to lower-level exempt employees.
Isn't that sweet? If you pass something that raises wages or gives employees overtime protection, then it's going to diminish their benefits and pay that they currently have, and those lower level employees are going to suffer. Wow. What a generous, generous industry of employers, folks. One of the big ones that we've seen recently, and this type of scam goes on all over. It's particular with pharmacists. So what happens is a pharmacist will come in early, they'll open up, they'll work all day, they'll close up the pharmacy, and they're paid as a manager. There is at least one case out there that says that is a misclassification and that pharmacist is doing all of these other jobs that are not management jobs. So the majority of their time is not spent on management tasks. This is all dependent on the FLSA, right? Fair Labor Standards Act. There are tons of laws out there. There are laws for government contracts. There are laws for private contracts, civilian contracts, right? If you have a question about wage and hour, put it in the comments section. Let's talk about it. And I'll give you an example. Every state's different. So in California, even if you don't work 40 hours in a week, if you work 9 hours in a day, you're entitled to overtime for that 1 hour, right? Down here in Florida, you got to work over 40 hours. It all depends on the state you're in. Comment below if you want us to talk about any other wage and hour type issues, benefit issues, government contract issues. I want to provide as much information to employees as possible to help protect you and your family. As always, love y'all. Always looking out for consumers. LegalBro out.